It's really tough to imagine what horror would be like without the usual jump scares and big climactic build-ups leading up to them. I feel like most of us have gotten bored of the usual route developers take when approaching horror games. Not to say that there aren't games that find a whole different way to scare you, but it's really easy to look into the horror genre on Steam and buy a game that's like all the others, crowded with jump scares and cheap sound effects to make you jump for a brief moment. We are born with only two innate fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud sounds. The latter half of that quote has been beaten half to death by the horror genre. Not to say that I still don't get jumpy when games or movies do jump scares, just that it really has no impact on me other than making me angry. Yes, really, I get angry when I get scared quickly, but one thing I don't get angry at is when a game's atmosphere is so chilling and unknown that it becomes borderline terrifying. It's that slowly inching feeling of danger, that fear of the unknown, that really messes with my head. And no other thing has made me more terrified of the unknown than an atmosphere with pure silence. Us humans have adapted through evolution to use sound to find out what's around us. And you've obviously noticed this. We associate sound with so many things, but in the context of horror, things like a loud bang or fast footsteps can startle us for a moment, before we regain our composure. I find sound design in games to be as fascinating as any other aspect of a game. Horror games in particular often excel at delivering beautiful soundtracks that have absolutely no right going as hard as they do. A great video by Jacob Geller highlights this. But I think why sound is so integral to horror games is because it has the capability to make us terrified of the smallest things. This fear of the unknown is what gives us those goosebumps when we're approaching a corner in a dark building. The ambience that accompanies this can also be as chilling as the environment itself. But what if there was no ambient music around you? What if instead of a tense and suspenseful track, it was totally silent, with the only things that you can hear being your own footsteps and your surroundings? A few months ago, I played Resident Evil Village for the first time, and aside from the few things that really stood out to me, like Ethan Winters being a really dumb protagonist at times, I found the atmosphere of the game to be incredibly dreadful. The story of the game backs this up. Ethan is searching for his baby daughter, Rose, who is kidnapped by a cult leader and scientist by the name of Miranda. Ethan wakes up after the vehicle he was in was run over near a village in Romania. Inspecting the area and going further to see what happened, we find ourselves in an old house outside the village. And this happens. This scene is a perfect example of how to leverage sound design as a standalone factor to make the player scared. Visually, there is no threat to be seen. The only thing you hear are your footsteps and eventually the bang upstairs. After this incident, I found this game to be incredibly tense. Establishing the fact that there will be barely any music in the background of this game this early on was one of the best ways to make you terrified of any location in the game. From this point on, I watched my back at any chance that I got. This single incident had burned this into me, and for the rest of the game, most of what I did was just listen. Every room, dark corner, large hallway, outside area, or unopened door became an instant possibility of a threat. With each step I took, I heard it echo through the environment, which made me more and more terrified of what could be around the corner. To start off, it's important for us to understand that we process sound faster than any other sense. In fact, some parts of the ear can engage within 0.025 seconds after a loud noise. This is called the Stapes reflex, more commonly known as the acoustic reflex. This reflex can protect your ears from sudden loud noises, like a loud thump or a gunshot. However, this reflex does play a role when multiple loud noises are heard. Because sound is so magnificently fast to process in our brain, it's the first thing we notice when something happens. Which is why you most likely jump at a jump scare. In essence, this reflex is preparing your body for danger faster than any other sense. Coming back to video games, the reason why a lot of horror games make the decision not to use any ambient music in more tense parts of their games is because of this. If there was music that was slowly creeping up on you as you approached a certain door or footsteps were rapidly approaching, it would make you a bit more scared because you knew you were going to get mauled to bits by a monster. But it also makes it more predictable. Music can obviously make us more scared. If you've played games like Outlast, you probably remember being terrified when Walker chased you for the first time. That fast-paced orchestral composition ringing in your ears as you try to escape a being that can rip you into shreds is terrifying the first few times. But it's important to remember that not all sections and scenes in games need big grand orchestral compositions. Most of a game should already be scary enough to the point where music wouldn't be needed. Because when that music is constantly there, as long as you heard combat music ringing in your ears, that chase theme that you hear every time Walker chases you, you knew you were in danger. But removing it can make the game feel even more anxious because you wouldn't have an indicator of danger anymore. It would make everything feel more uncertain, making you question your safety in each scenario you engage in. But games like Outlast really do seem to benefit from tense and anxious music. Maybe it's because I'm used to the way that the game plays out, but without the music, it would feel like something is missing. And to be honest, I don't think I would find Walker's heavy breathing to be that scary during a chase sequence. Either way, Outlast is definitely a game that benefits from the music. Maybe if it didn't have that music, I would feel very different about it. But all this just goes to show how wildly difficult it is to make something scary. Fear is one of our most primal instincts. It's a system that indicates danger, whether instant or looming. It's an incredibly hard thing to carry over into a form of media. It's hard to put into words, yet it's something that you can easily think about after experiencing it. Coming back to the topic, the question of how horror games can make silence terrifying isn't one that is easy to answer, because there are so many moving parts to a game that make it feel terrifying. For silence to terrify you, you already need an atmosphere and world that is incredibly dangerous and unpredictable. That is why Signalis or Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 8 are so good at making you terrified just by existing in their world. It's all because of how the world composes itself, the uncertainty behind every corner, the fragility of the walls around you, the creature that would absolutely love to rip you to shreds. All of these things work together to create something that will make you on edge just by standing in place, by not having any music around you. These all work together to instill a fear in you, a fear that plagues you wherever you go, a fear that is plagued with uncertainty, the fear of the unknown. Silence itself is nothing, it is quite literally just no sound, but with the right context, it's a tool that can make your heart pound in suspense, and make your mind race with all the possible things lurking around you. Without music, background tracks or ambience, and an atmosphere that will make you terrified, silence is the most terrifying thing you can face.